Uh, Today I'm going to explain how to make a resume because um, a resume is a very important piece of paper that some managers ask for when applying for a job that you have to work really hard for. It's hard to write a resume, especially when you don't know what you're doing to put on it. I bet only half of the class in here, for sure, does not know how to write a resume. Step number one is include a profile. Begin your resume with a profile which contains a synopsis of your varied skills. Step two, keep the resume short. No one has time to go through your resume through every detail, and nobody has at least an hour to go through it. Give more importance on content. Number three. One of the major mistakes people make while creating resumes is the use of fancy fonts. Avoid using fancy fonts and do not change the font regularly throughout the resume. You don't want fonts like big, small, big, small, big, small. You only use different fonts when you are changing your header or going from a header to describing what's there. Number four, clearly identify your skills. Do not be modest mentioning your skills. Clearly identify your skills while you distinguish from the other job seekers, and eventually help your potential employers to select you from the rest. Put on there, when you identify your skills, you want to put like you worked at a burger joint for 10 years, or you also want to put on there like your clubs that you have been in, like FBLA, CCLA, and stuff like that, FFA. Step number five, list your educational and professional qualifications. List how many years you've went to school, the school you've went to, and Step number six, focus on your job responsibilities. Starting with your present position or most recent job, mention the title of every job you have held, along with the name of the company, city, and state, and also include the number of years you've worked there. Like if you have been working for computers, put that you've worked for a computer place for like 10 years, 5 years, and put what you've done. Step number seven, add related qualifications and interests. Think about everything else that might qualify you for your job objective and place it at the bottom of the resume. It may include license, certifications, award, and achievements. Your clubs you've been involved in, FFA, FBLA, art, CBA, and stuff like that. And you want to write a cover letter to go on top of this, and it tells a perspective of who you are and what your story is about. A cover letter is how one can showcase your own personality and set yourself apart from the crowd. This is to identify you, like you want to put your name, your street address, your phone number, but you don't want to only include that on the cover letter, but you want to also include that on the resume at the top. Have a video, it explains a resume and how to do one and what they expect, easier than what I have, but it will explain what they're looking for, and so on and so on.
questions about resumes, and there are a lot of books and resources and tools and tips that are out there, and some of them are really, really good and can be helpful to you in the process. Some of the information that's out there is really bad, and it hurts job seekers. So I'm going to share a couple of things from my perspective as someone who looks and reads resumes all day long and works with their clients as we make determinations and decisions based on resume.
3 things to keep in mind when writing your resume. 1, your resume should tell your story.
There's 3 big things about resumes that I want to talk about. First of all, the role of the resume is different today than ever before. It used to be that your resume was the advertisement about yourself that would get you in for the interview, and then you could tell the rest of the story. And today, the resume is where kind of the decision is made on whether or not you'll even get an interview. So your resume has to be robust and complete and contain as much information so that you look like the stellar candidate and stand out.
2, your resume needs to articulate your job responsibilities and accomplishments.
One of the things that's really key about resumes is to write it with the perspective of responsibilities and accomplishments for all the different positions that you've been in. What is horrible is when I get a resume that's full of a bunch of responsibilities for a particular job, but there's no accomplishments associated with it, or vice versa, where there's a whole bunch of accomplishments, but it really doesn't identify what this person was responsible for.
3, avoid having very different versions of your resume.
I am not a fan of these multiple versions of resumes. I received one last week from an individual where one resume that was sent in identified this person as a very strong operations person, chief operating officer, and then it was followed by a resume that presented this person as an HR executive. And so I'm reading this and I'm like, well, which is it? And so it's really distracting. It's not helpful to the candidate. You don't want to be the candidate where a hiring manager pulls up your information and there's 4 versions of who you are and what your experiences are.
Clearly connect responsibilities, accomplishments, and positions.
I also am not a fan of the resumes that are built from the perspective of, let me tell you all the things that I've done at the top, and then I'll tell you where I worked later. Because guess what? Hiring companies are not going to go back and try to piece together where you were and when you did these things and put the resume back together. So it's really important to keep those things lined up.
References available on request.
Here's a very, very basic tip. Don't put references are available on your resume. It will make you come across that you're not business savvy. It goes without saying that you would have references when those are necessary and required.
What about my interests?
There's a lot of questions about what should you do regarding hobbies and different things that you do. And I would say if it relates to the position that you're applying for, that's great. But don't send me a resume that tells me you like to knit and you're applying for a controller position. I mean, those things just don't go together. It's not relevant to the position, and it's not really helpful.
Where can I get more information on resumes?
There'll be another video coming up in the future that will be really, really detailed about how to write your resume, what not to do with your resume, and so this will give you some food for thought and things to think about as it relates to resumes.
Okay. We have went over 7 different tips. Tip number 1 again, include a profile. Number 2, keep the resume short. Number 3, give more importance on content. Number 4, clearly identify your skills. Number 5, list your educational and professional qualifications. Number 6, focus on your job responsibilities. And number 7, add related qualifications and interest. Like this lady said, don't send her a resume that says you like to knit, because that is not necessary. Today I've shared my process speech about how to create a resume. I've included 7 different steps First things first, make a list of skills and interests and include a profile. Gather reference materials, transfer information, keep the resume short, give more importance on content, and so on and so on. Write a cover letter and put all these steps together. And thank you for letting me share with you.